News stories are like pornography. You know one when you see it, though it might be hard to define. And so on Saturday night, 72 hours, 96 hours ago, 300 to 400 black people were on a subway in New York and Chicago, the Red Line, on the way to the Magnificent Mile. They were creating all sorts of violence, mayhem, threats, robbery. And when they get down to the Magnificent Mile, remember the Magnificent Mile in Chicago is the upscale, extremely upscale shopping area. It's the original neighborhood where people say, well, gosh, Colin, we've never seen anything like that around here before. Well, they stopped saying that several years ago after white people on the Magnificent Mile became a regular and predictable target of large-scale black mob violence at the Magnificent Mile. So anyway, Saturday night, I start getting these emails from cops in Chicago, from viewers in Chicago, from other people who read the Chicago websites, one in particular. And the headline goes, Magnificent Mile goes wild, at least 4 injured as dozens of teens run rampant near historic water tower. And they go on to give some of the details, save 2. 1, there were 300 to 400 people there. And 2, there were 300 to 400 black people there. That's what happened at the Magnificent Mile on Saturday night. And when they got there, every cop in Chicago knew what happened within a few hours. They were attacking cops. They were robbing civilians, stealing their cell phones, beating the hell out of people, threatening other people, going into stores, destroying property, the whole thing. Second City cop figured it out right away when they said, and the media gives it exactly 0 coverage. Then they go on to give some details of what happened down there. But you know, the interesting thing about these large-scale episodes of black mob violence, one of the things they always do is they explain it before they tell you what you're about to see. And so what they're doing here is the explanation for this, that the local newspapers and the local TV, after they have 48 to 72 hours to finally figure out that 300 to 400 black people were running amok, creating incredible levels of violence and mayhem in their city, took them 96 hours to figure that out. In other words, they ignored it for as long as they could. And when they couldn't ignore it any longer, they went into denial, deceit, and delusion about it by refusing to tell everybody this was a large-scale episode of black mob violence, and then trying to tell us it's all because of the weather. Oh, it's the summertime, Colin. It's Chicago. Don't you know on March 17th, we dye the river green? Then a few weeks later, we celebrate the spring and the summer by inviting large groups of black people in Chicago to come down to the Magnificent Mile and create incredible levels of violence and mayhem. That's what that says. Why don't we get a few more details from the clowns on the scene?
Teens hit the streets robbing and pushing people on the Mag Mile Saturday night. Tonight, one alderman says warning systems failed, catching police by surprise. Roseanne Tellez is near the water tower. So, Roseanne, what went wrong here?
Well, Rob, Alderman Brian Hopkins says police simply didn't see what was brewing despite the many surveillance cameras in the area. But he does credit police with acting quickly to end the melee.
We heard the conductor of the train yelling at them, saying the police are coming.
This Red Line rider gave us pictures and video of police questioning youth on a train Saturday night.
Do your parents know where you are, who you're with, what you're doing?
They were running down the stairs there and moving people, like pushing people out of the way, sort of. And then when they got to the turnstile, she said they just hopped over.
As many as 150 youth hopped off at the Chicago Red Line stop, and according to 2nd Ward Alderman Brian Hopkins, caused major chaos between there and the water tower.
Started immediately making a lot of noise, shouting, yelling, pushing pedestrians. So clearly this was designed to frighten people and intimidate people.
Hopkins says some of the young people stole cell phones and purses. The mobs have struck before. This video shows the mayhem back in 2013. But Hopkins says with so many cameras in the area, police should have seen what was about to happen last Saturday.
But we're going to do some internal review and figure out what went wrong so that the patrol officers aren't caught with no warning like they were Saturday night.
They were outnumbered.
They were vastly outnumbered by a significant margin.
Police confirm only one arrest that night. It was for felony assault to a police officer. Somebody threw a cup of some sort of liquid on an officer. Now, Alderman Hopkins says police simply cannot prevent these kinds of incidents, but they can respond more effectively. Live on the Mag Mile, Roseanne Tejas, CBS 2 News. Rob?
Roseanne, how did all these kids show up in the same place? Was it social media, putting the word out on social media?
That's exactly what they do, Rob. They put out the word. There were two huge groups, one at Water Tower, one at the Red Line, and the two converged, and that's when the chaos started for about 90 minutes.
I love the Chicago alderman, right? The clown number one, that alderman comes out and says, oh yes, we were this was out of control, this was that, all this kind of fake outrage, fake surprise, fake the whole idea of being denial, deceit, and delusion about this entire system that he's part and parcel of because he's a Democrat. And the Democrats run the district attorney's office, they run the Chicago mayor's office, they run the city council, they run the whole shebang. So another tradition in Chicago is when you catch black people committing a crime, you basically try to pretend that they didn't commit the crime and you pat them on the head with a promise to go forth and sin no more. That's called criminal justice reform in Chicago. Part and parcel of that reform is this city councilman coming up there and trying to pretend like he's not part of the problem he is describing. He's not causing the problem he is describing. It hasn't been going on in Chicago for so long that everybody already knows the script. Everybody already knows what's really happening, despite the fairy tale you want to try to weave around it. Everybody in Chicago knows what is happening. They knew before. Apparently, everybody in Chicago knew about this before the people who are paid to know about it knew about it. The people in the news bureaus. And you don't have to tell people that it was 300, 400 black people doing it because everybody knows that's who did it. Everybody knows that it is the official policy of the government in Chicago to ignore it. And everybody knows it's going to just keep happening over and over and over again because of the ineffectual response. Because when they catch somebody, they let them go with promises to be a good boy in the future. So it keeps happening over and over again. People are leaving Chicago, especially people with money and property. They're leaving Chicago because they know, they look at stories like this and they go, what, we can't even agree that if somebody starts, a large group of black people regularly start attacking rich white people, we can't even agree that maybe we should put them in jail. We can't agree on that. And you remember all the incredible level of racial hostility we've seen and heard in Chicago over the years. I'm thinking of well, let's just call her, I don't like doing fat shaming around here, pleasingly plump Karen, I think her name was Karen Lewis, when she told the white parents of Chicago, it's not your school anymore. It's not your school district anymore. It's our school district. Everybody knows in Chicago, huge swaths of Chicago are off limits to black people. Everybody knows that if the cops go down there and start arresting black people, the cops are going to be the ones who get in trouble, not the criminals. The central organizing feature of life in Chicago is how do we avoid becoming victims of this black criminality while at the same time denying it even exists. You can't have a city that's organized around that kind of idea, not for long. No matter how many yuppie bars where people are drinking $12 beers and pretending that the Cubs or the Chicago White Sox are a big part of their lives. That's not a city, that's something else entirely. And nobody in Chicago is calling that out, not nearly enough, except for a website or two, while the major daily newspapers and the other sites just keep ignoring it because they know better than to make the black kids angry.